I never thought I would lose myself for a man. I'm the kind of woman who knows exactly what she wants and how to achieve it. Throughout my younger years, I threw myself into work like a whirlwind, conquering every goal I set for myself step by step. Success didn't come to me by luck. It was the result of hard work, perseverance, and a bit of boldness. By the age of 35, I had a small yet cozy apartment in the heart of the city, a dream job in marketing, and a life free from any constraints. I had no time for complicated relationships, especially love. But then, Ethan appeared. I met Ethan on a Saturday morning when the entire city was still drowsy in the crisp autumn air. I stopped by my usual coffee shop, the one I often visited to read the news and plan my work for the upcoming week. As I reached for the last blueberry muffin on the counter, another hand reached for it at the same time. I looked up and met a pair of bright blue eyes. His lips curled into a subtle, amused smile on his handsome face. "Sorry, but I think I got here first," I said, not intending to back down. He chuckled, pulling his hand back slightly but keeping his gaze locked on mine. "Oh, really? But I think if I let you have it, I at least deserve your phone number in return, don't I?" I let out a small laugh, unable to deny the charm in his confidence. And just like that, I left the coffee shop that morning with both the muffin and a new number saved in my phone. I didn't think much about Ethan until he texted me that evening. A simple yet thoughtful message. "How was the muffin today? If it was good, I'll take that as a lucky sign and ask you out to dinner." I hesitated for a moment but then agreed. A casual dinner wouldn't change my busy life, at least, that's what I thought. But Ethan was different from any man I had dated before. He didn't try to be flashy or make exaggerated efforts to impress me. Instead, he paid attention to the little things I said. On our second date, he picked a restaurant that served my favorite pasta. On our third, he brought me a book by an author I had only mentioned once in passing. He didn't need to say much, his actions spoke louder than words. I found myself falling into the relationship faster than I had expected. One date turned into weekend getaways, short text messages became late-night conversations. For the first time in years, I felt like someone had truly entered my life, not just as a fleeting presence, but as someone who belonged. Ethan also had a special bond with his mother Diane. He called her every day, always checking to see if she needed anything. I admired that. A man who loves his mother is surely a man who will cherish the woman in his life, right? I thought so until the day he proposed to me. There was no grand romantic gesture or a dazzling diamond ring. It was just the two of us, in the small park where we often took evening strolls. A simple gold ring, nothing extravagant yet perfect. I didn't need time to think. I nodded immediately, believing I had found the man of my life. But I didn't know that in this marriage, I wasn't just marrying Ethan, I was also marrying his mother. I never imagined that just a few weeks after that sweet proposal, we would find ourselves in our first serious discussion about the future. Ethan had always been thoughtful and gentle, but when it came to talking about our living arrangements after marriage, he suddenly became more firm than ever. "Baby, I have an idea," Ethan said as we were cleaning up the kitchen after dinner. I turned to look at him, sensing something unusual in his tone. "What is it?" I asked, drying my hands with a kitchen towel while waiting for his response. Ethan leaned against the counter, absent-mindedly twisting the towel in his hands, an obvious sign that he was trying to say something he knew I wouldn't like. "Mom suggested that we move in with her after the wedding." I blinked, unsure if I had heard him correctly. "Move in with your mom?" I repeated each word carefully, as if saying it again would help me process what he'd just said. Or Ethan nodded, flashing a smile that he probably thought was convincing. "Yeah. We could save a lot of money and Mom would love having us around. You know, she's been living alone since Dad passed away." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Ethan, I understand that your mom is important to you, but I can't live with my mother-in-law right after getting married. We need our own space to build our life together." He frowned slightly, as if he hadn't expected me to refuse so quickly. "But you'll love Mom, she's really easygoing and—" I cut him off. "It's not about whether I like your mom or not. This is our marriage, Ethan. We need to have our own home." A few seconds of silence passed before he finally nodded, though he didn't seem entirely convinced. "All right then, can we at least find a place near her, so she won't feel abandoned?" I exhaled in relief. That was a compromise I could accept. "Near, but not in the same house, okay?" He smiled, pulling me close. I promise. We found a small apartment just 10 minutes away from Diane's house. I continued my job and Ethan was busy with his new project. Life seemed relatively peaceful and I told myself that everything would eventually settle into place. But I was wrong. Just a few weeks into our marriage, I realized that Ethan was still spending most of his free time at his mother's house. Every day after work, instead of coming straight home, he would stop by Diane's, helping her with household tasks or simply having tea with her. At first, I thought it was sweet. But over time, I started to feel like I was becoming second place in my own husband's life. Some days he came home late because he was too caught up fixing his mother's old bookshelf. Other times he stayed to help her sort through stacks of old documents. There were moments when we would be watching a movie together and his phone would ring. He would immediately rush to her place for the smallest of reasons. Mom can't open the pickle jar. Mom can't find the TV remote. And then, one day, I realized that this dependency had gone far beyond what I could tolerate. Diane caught the flu. Ethan was more worried than the doctor himself. The moment I stepped into our home after work, he rushed over. "Can you check on Mom? I have an urgent meeting tonight." I pressed my lips together, feeling frustration build inside me. "Ethan, it's just the flu, it's not that serious." "But she needs someone to take care of her, Lucy." He looked at me expectantly. I sighed, giving in. "Fine, I'll go." But what started as a one-time favor quickly turned into an obligation. Diane became increasingly reliant on me for everything, from cooking and cleaning to driving her to the grocery store every week. At first I thought she just needed time to recover, but even after she got better the requests kept coming. "Lucy, can you help me with the laundry?" "Lucy, I forgot to buy milk, can you swing by the store?" "Lucy, can you help me clean up the yard this weekend?" I couldn't say no. Ethan always reminded me that his mother was alone and lonely. I kept trying to convince myself that this was only temporary, that things would eventually change. But as time passed, I realized that my role in this family was no longer just Ethan's wife. I had unknowingly taken on the role of a daughter to my mother-in-law. My life started revolving around working all day, then rushing to my mother-in-law's house to cook, clean, and take care of various errands. Quiet dinners with Ethan became rare, and weekends meant for just the two of us nearly disappeared. One Sunday night, after washing a pile of dishes at Diane's house, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and stared at myself. My face looked exhausted, dark circles under my eyes were evident, and I realized, how long had it been since I had an evening to myself? How long had I stopped being a priority in my own marriage? I walked out into the living room and saw Ethan chatting comfortably with his mother. He didn't notice the tension on my face, nor did he realize that his wife, the woman he once claimed was the most important person in his life, was slowly being consumed by a marriage she never imagined. I took a deep breath. If I didn't act soon, I might never find myself again. One late evening, after finishing the kitchen cleanup at Diane's house, I sat down at the dining table, watching Ethan scroll through his phone. My mind was filled with too many thoughts, but I knew if I didn't speak up now, I might never get the right moment. "Ethan," I said, keeping my voice as calm as possible. He looked up, his expression slightly tired. "What is it, babe?" I traced the rim of my glass, took a deep breath and said, "I think it's time we have a baby." Ethan froze for a moment, then a slow smile appeared on his face. "You really want that?" I nodded. "I've thought about this a lot. We've been married for over a year now, and I want us to build a real family. Just you and me, with a child." Ethan put his phone down and reached for my hand. "I want that too, Lucy. But," I frowned, a feeling of unease creeping into my chest. "But what?" He hesitated for a moment before speaking quickly. "But if we have a baby, we should move in with Mom. She'll help you take care of the baby, and that way, you won't have to manage everything alone." I pulled my hand away, feeling as if someone had just poured a bucket of cold water over me. "Ethan, are you serious? We agreed to live on our own." "I know," Ethan replied, his voice softening, "but having a baby is a big deal. We're going to need support, and my mom can help you a lot." I felt my heart sink. "Ethan, I don't need help from your mom, I just need you." The air grew tense. After a long pause, Ethan sighed. "All right, Lucy. If that's really what you want, we'll keep things the way they are." I nodded, but deep down, I didn't feel entirely at ease. I told myself that I could manage everything. We started trying for a baby, but 6 months passed and nothing changed. I started to worry. I ate healthier, exercised more, and tracked my cycle meticulously, but no matter how hard I tried, I still wasn't getting pregnant. After a year of trying, I decided to get checked by a doctor. The doctor sat across from me, his face serious as he reviewed my test results. "Lucy," he said slowly, "your body shows signs of a hormone commonly found in birth control pills." I froze. "I'm sorry, but I don't take birth control." He raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure? Because the hormone levels in your blood indicate consistent use over a long period of time." A wave of dizziness hit me. I shook my head firmly. "No, I've never taken it. My husband and I have been trying to conceive." The doctor studied me for a moment before nodding slightly. "There might have been a mix-up with some supplements or vitamins you're taking. I suggest checking everything you've been consuming carefully." I left the clinic in a daze. That evening, as usual, I stopped by Diane's house. While cleaning up in the kitchen, my eyes caught sight of a blister pack discarded in the trash. My stomach dropped when I realized it wasn't just any medication. It was birth control. My hands trembled as I picked it up. Turning around, I looked at Diane, who was sitting comfortably on the couch, completely unaware that I had just uncovered a devastating secret. "Mrs. Diane," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Whose pills are these?" She startled, her eyes darting quickly to the package in my hand. "Oh, that must be old. I don't really remember." "Really?" I stared at her. "Because my doctor told me that my body has hormones from birth control, and I've never taken it." Diane remained silent for a long moment. Then she sighed, her voice carrying a hint of exhaustion. "Lucy, you have to understand. If you have a child, you and Ethan will have your own family, and I'll be alone again." My entire body went rigid. "Are you saying you switched my vitamins with birth control?" Diane lowered her head. "I just wanted to keep my son close." A wave of anger surged through me. "Do you realize what you've done? You didn't just control my marriage, you controlled my body." I turned and walked out of her house, my heart pounding in my chest. When Ethan came home, I didn't wait. I threw the blister pack onto the table in front of him. "Your mother did this," I said coldly. "She switched my pills, making sure I couldn't get pregnant." Ethan looked at the pack, then at me, confusion spreading across his face. "Lucy? Are you sure?" She admitted it herself. My hands clenched into fists. "Ethan, this is not something small." He took a deep breath, then shook his head. "I know my mom can be overprotective, but she didn't mean any harm." I let out a bitter laugh. "No harm? Ethan, she deliberately stopped us from having a child." He blinked, then said the words that shattered everything. "We can't be mad at her for being afraid of losing me." I looked at my husband and realized that Ethan would never be on my side, never. And at that moment I understood, if I kept tolerating this, I would lose everything, including myself. I had known for a long time that my marriage was rotten, but I hadn't been ready to accept that truth. Until the day I discovered Ethan's final betrayal. After the birth control incident, I withdrew. I stopped visiting Diane as often, stopped trying to maintain the illusion of a happy marriage. I focused on my job, saving every penny I could. The rental income from my apartment remained my only financial safety net. I knew I needed an exit plan, an escape, if everything truly fell apart. And then I got pregnant. After all the obstacles, after a year of battling between hope and disappointment, I was finally carrying a tiny life inside me. I thought Ethan would be thrilled, but the reality was much more bitter than I had expected. When I told him the news, he smiled faintly, but the excitement I had hoped for was nowhere to be found. "That's great, babe," he said, but his voice was empty. "We'll have to make some adjustments." A week later, he brought up the idea of moving in with his mother again. "Lucy, Mom will help us so much, we'll save money on rent, and you won't have to worry about taking care of the baby alone." I had no patience left. "Ethan, I am not moving in with your mother," I said, enunciating each word clearly. "And we don't need her help, we can manage on our own." He sighed and shook his head as if I were saying something completely irrational. "You're so stubborn, Lucy." I didn't respond, because by now I knew that this marriage had become nothing more than an endless battle between me and his mother. By the 8th month of my pregnancy, I decided to visit my parents in another city for a week. I needed some peace. Needed to be around people who truly loved me. Ethan didn't object. If anything, he seemed indifferent about me leaving for a while. I thought maybe he needed a break too. But I never expected him to use this opportunity to do something so despicable. On the third day at my parents' house, I got a call from Ethan. At first I thought it was something important, but the moment I heard his slurred voice over the phone, a bad feeling settled in my chest. "Lucy, come back," he mumbled, his voice mixing with the loud sounds of laughter and music in the background. "The house is a mess and I don't want to clean it up." I gripped the phone tightly. "What did you just say?" "I had a little get-together with some friends, but now they've all left and the house is a disaster." I felt rage bubbling inside me. "You're telling me to cut my trip short just to clean up your mess?" I nearly shouted. "Well, you're my wife, aren't you?" He let out a mocking laugh. "I thought that was part of your job." That was the moment I knew. I was completely done with this marriage. But I didn't have time to dwell on it, because at that exact moment, a sharp pain shot through my stomach. Labor had begun. I gave birth alone. No Ethan. No support, no comforting words. He wasn't there to hold my hand. Wasn't there when the doctor placed our tiny baby on my chest. When I called him after giving birth, his voice was groggy with sleep. "Oh wow, you had the baby. I'll come by later, I'm too tired right now." I hung up, tears rolling down my cheeks. But the biggest shock was yet to come. 3 days later, as I was discharged from the hospital and prepared to pay my medical bills, I logged into my bank account to transfer the money, but the number on the screen made my heart stop. My balance was nearly zero. Over $40,000, the savings I had carefully built up, was gone. My hands trembled as I dialed Ethan's number. He picked up after a few rings, his voice lazy, as if I was bothering him. "Ethan, my account is empty," I said, my voice breaking. "What happened?" He was silent for a few seconds, then let out a small chuckle. "Oh yeah, Mom needed some money for a vacation." "Do you really need that much? You still have your salary, don't you?" I felt my entire world collapse. He wasn't sorry. Not even a little. I hung up, my whole body shaking with rage. I knew I couldn't stay in this marriage 1 second longer. 2 weeks later, I placed the divorce papers in front of Ethan. He glanced at the document, shrugged. "All right, if that's what you want." That was it. No argument, no resistance. He signed his name and packed his bags that same night. I later heard he moved back in with his mother. I thought I had escaped the nightmare. But soon, I realized that losing my savings wasn't the worst part. While reviewing my bank statements, I discovered that Ethan had forged my signature to transfer money to his mother. I reached out to Ethan's older brother, who had cut ties with their family years ago. When I told him everything, he let out a deep sigh. "You're not the first. My mom did the same thing to my ex-wife. You should go to the police." And so I did. The investigation lasted several months, but eventually the truth came to light. Ethan hadn't just taken my money, he had also falsified documents to transfer ownership of part of my assets to his mother. Both of them received suspended sentences and were ordered to pay restitution. But I didn't care about the money anymore. I just wanted freedom. And for the first time in years, I truly felt like I had reclaimed myself. 2 months after the divorce, I received an unexpected phone call from Ethan's brother, the one I had only heard about through Ethan, who had painted him as a cold-hearted man who abandoned their mother. His name was Ryan, and he lived with his wife and 2 children in a small town nearly 3 hours away. At first I was hesitant to answer, but his warm and genuine voice put me at ease. "Lucy, I'm really sorry for everything you've been through," he said gently. "If you ever need someone to talk to, my family is always here." With some hesitation, I agreed to visit them at their cozy lakeside home, where they had lived since cutting ties with Diane years ago. From the moment I stepped inside their small house, I felt a stark contrast to everything Diane had ever told me about them. Ethan's brother Andrew welcomed me and my son with a tight hug, as if we were long-lost family. His wife Clara smiled warmly as she took my baby in her arms, her eyes filled with genuine affection. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly welcomed. Something I hadn't experienced in all those years living under the shadow of Diane and Ethan. We sat in the backyard, where Andrew's 2 children ran around happily alongside my son. Clara poured me a glass of iced tea, her eyes filled with understanding. Lucy, we also struggled with my mother-in-law interfering too much in our lives, Clara said gently. Diane always wanted control over everything, including our finances. It nearly tore our marriage apart. I glanced at Andrew, who looked distant for a moment. My mom isn't a bad person, but she's terrified of being alone and always wants to be in control. I had to choose between my own family and her. At first it was painful, but I eventually realized that the people closest to me had to come first. I remained silent, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. I wasn't the first or the only one who had faced Diane's suffocating control, and more importantly, I now knew that I wasn't alone in this fight. Frequent visits with Andrew's family became a new source of joy in my life. They filled the emptiness Ethan had left behind, bringing warmth and genuine happiness that I thought I had lost forever. We shared cozy dinners, and the sound of children's laughter echoed throughout the house. One evening, as we all gathered in the backyard, Andrew placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder and said sincerely, "Lucy, you're not alone. You made the right choice by breaking free from that cycle. Now you've found your real family." Watching my son play joyfully with his cousins, I smiled softly. For the first time, I felt truly at peace and happy. But deep down, I knew my journey to finding true peace wasn't completely over yet. Life doesn't always go the way we expect, but sometimes painful experiences lead us to something better. Lucy once believed that love and marriage would bring her happiness, but she never imagined being trapped in a toxic relationship where control and betrayal overshadowed genuine love. Yet she found the courage to stand up, fight for her freedom, and protect her son. Her journey is a reminder that family isn't about blood. It's about the people who love and cherish us unconditionally. What do you think about Lucy's journey? Did she make the right decision by leaving a toxic marriage to reclaim happiness for herself and her son? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more meaningful stories about family and life.